Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you to the President of the General Assembly for inviting us to participate in this very interesting and timely discussion. I just want to, take a few moments to reflect on kind of the language that we're using in all of these discussions, not just this forum, but in all other negotiations as well on post-2015. We're always talking about follow-up and review and monitoring. But I think it's really important to note that these terms aren't necessarily the same as accountability. And I think it's really important, these elements are really important in realizing true accountability for the post-2015 agenda. But in order to do so, we must have the principles of transparency and citizen participation embedded in this review mechanism. That's been mentioned numerous times from the panel and the respondents thus far. And I think it's safe to assume that all of us in this room and everyone that's working on the post-2015 agenda all around the world, I think it's safe to assume that we all collectively want to be successful in the implementation of the post-2015 agenda. So I think it's important, let's make sure that we're enabling that success and mutual accountability by all actors, not just member states, but civil society and the private sector as well, and not shy away from it or be intimidated by this concept of accountability. Member states always mention the importance and value of state-led review processes, and I've mentioned it again today, and undoubtedly that is an important concept in this review process. But I think, the post-2015 follow-up and implementation, sure, it has to be state-led, but it also has to be people-driven. So in order to ensure true accountability for the post-2015 agenda, the follow-up and review processes really must facilitate responsibility, answerability, and enforceability. And I won't elaborate on these points. They're outlined in a broader collective position paper that the TAP network has put together on the issue of accountability. And we've heard member states recognize the importance of an open, participatory, and inclusive approach, and we welcome that and thank them for their support and ambition. But as a network of organizations focused on transparency, accountability, and participation, we ask specifically for the Zero Draft to embed these principles in the very core of the approach to the follow-up and review processes. This affirmation will undoubtedly open up a pathway through which civil society can play an active role in the implementation and the follow-up of the post-2015 agenda over the coming 15 years. We've all collectively put in a lot of work over the past few years, but I think obviously the implementation side of things in the next 15 years is probably the most important, obviously, part of this agenda. Reflecting on, not just discussions here, but through the negotiations as well, member states, and we all talk about incentivizing the participation or the engagement of member states in these review processes. And I think you'll find that civil society is not just interested in, finger pointing or naming and shaming and really holding member states to account. I think you'll find that, civil society is also really interested in genuine partnership with governments, with the UN system in the implementation of the post-2015 agenda. And I think you've seen that through the post-2015, the open working group process and the post-2015 processes to date. And I think you'll see this amplified in the implementation and review phase of the post-2015 agenda. To us, there's also no greater incentive for member states to engage in this process than to actually have an opportunity to engage with people on the ground, local communities. I think that's an incentive in itself. And we all recognize that truly sustainable development, transformative sustainable development, is only possible if it's reflective of the needs and priorities of people on the ground. And progress on implementation of Goal 16 in particular is very important to achieving these ends as well. Another issue that is often raised by member states and others as well is a lack of capacity to undertake follow-up and review efforts, or the burden on member states in these follow-up and review processes. And on this front, I think civil society can really help share these burdens and fill these capacity gaps, if you will, in data, in statistics, as well as implementation and review and monitoring. So I think that, again, is another incentive in itself. And you know, I think it's been brought up before, but, you know, why not harness the existing capacity from civil society organizations on the ground that are already doing very good work on all of these issues, on all 17 goals in the post-2015 agenda. But again, these review processes have to ensure and institutionalize this participation at all levels, including the national, local, regional, and global levels. You know, the post-2015 agenda has been transformative in its openness through the open working group process, but I think it can be argued that civil society is even more important in the implementation and the follow-up and accountability for the agenda. And just a few quick points. A few people have mentioned the value of indicators, and this is absolutely crucial to our work on follow-up and review and accountability. You know, we recognize that any indicator framework has to draw upon both official as well as third-party data sources, and that includes data from the UN and other multilateral institutions, but also civil society, research institutions, academia, the private sector, citizens on the ground. And really should use a wide range of data sources, so qualitative and quantitative data, including administrative data, experiential, factual, and perception-based surveys, and expert assessments. So it has to be inclusive of actual progress on the ground. And finally, you know, we all recognize that we want this to be a transformative agenda, so we need to take this post-2015 agenda opportunity to really significantly improve the access to data. And again, this is another way where civil society can really help fill these gaps by member states. It's not just member states implementing this agenda alone. Civil society has a huge role to play in the implementation and the follow-up review and accountability for this agenda as well. And I think, you know, we can assure you, I'm sure others in the room will speak to this as well, that civil society and all non-governmental stakeholders are really stand ready to support this very important work over the next 15 years, and really greatly look forward to working in partnership with governments all around the world in implementing this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.